If you're looking for a perfect microphone pair for your podcast, live streams, tutorials, voiceover, or recording vocals for a song, then you've landed on the right video. Here's my review of the Shure SM7b microphone, paired with the DBX 286s microphone preamp. Now, before I break down the features of the DBX, I first want to note that the Shure SM7b by itself is hella quiet. This microphone has an output level of negative 69 dBV, or decibels referenced to volts, which is pretty low. So, you'll need a microphone preamp with at least 60 dB of gain on it to get the signal level as close to 0 dBV or line level as possible. Now, depending on what interface you have, it's likely you're going to have to crank that preamp on it just to hear your voice. But it'll sound really distorted, and you'll also raise that annoying noise floor. If you've been researching this microphone already, you might have heard of a cloudlifter. A lot of people recommend this device to bring up the microphone's clean gain on the way into your interface so you don't have to crank that preamp. I definitely don't doubt the cloudlifter's ability, however I would not recommend it. Here's why. With the DBX 286s paired with this mic, you're getting way more bang for your buck. For what the cloudlifter is worth, it's actually more worth saving a few more dollars to invest in this microphone processor instead. It's got way more features to offer you and gives you more control over the sound of the SM7B before it hits your DAW or video recording software. Now, let's jump straight into the features of the DBX 286s microphone processor. The DBX fits in most standard rack spaces. This unit pretty much remains on 24/7. There isn't an off button, so as long as you have electricity running into it, it won't turn off. Keeping it in a cool place with space for airflow is important so your unit doesn't get too hot. On the backside, there are two 1/4-inch TRS inputs, one XLR input, and one 1/4-inch TRS output. My connection is quite simple. My microphone XLR cable is running into the DBX XLR input, then out with a 1/4-inch TRS male into the line input of my Audient ID14 interface. Then I'm all set to dial in the processor in real time or before hitting record. No need to touch your interface preamps while using the DBX since the processing is happening before the signal hits your interface. On the front side of the unit, we have a few amazing features. I'm going to show you what these features do in real time so you hear it for yourself. All right, so the first feature we have on the front of this device is the preamp. It provides up to 60 decibels of clean gain, so if you're using a low noise dynamic microphone, this is perfect, especially if you're using an SM7B. You'll notice that on the knob, I actually don't have it cranked all the way up. I have it about 3 to 4 notches below the 60 decibel mark. The reason for that is if you notice the little LED lights to the right of it, I don't want to hit the red. That means I'm clipping or distorting the signal. So to prevent that, I just kind of back off of the preamp just a little bit. If I'm rapping or singing and I'm making music, I will be louder than I am talking. So that would be another reason why I would want to back off of the preamp so that if I get louder, I'm not like really hitting it and then it starts to clip. Next, we have a 48 volts of phantom power. Now, I don't use this because I'm using a dynamic microphone, but you will need to use that if you're using a condenser microphone instead. And if you notice on the interface that you're using, there's probably a switch for 48 volts of phantom power. But since this processing is happening before it hits your interface, you're going to want to use the phantom power on the DBX instead of your interface. Next to that, we have an 80 Hertz high pass button. And if you have a microphone that captures like a lot of the low end of your voice, or if you just naturally have a really deep voice and it's really bassy, then applying the 80 Hertz high pass kind of just filters out some of that low end so that your signal sounds a little bit more clean and you can kind of cut out some of that bass rumble that might be captured in the microphone. Next up, we have the process bypass button, and that basically disengages everything to the right of that button other than the output. So it will disengage any compression, de-esser, or the gate that you have applied to your vocals. So the reason you would want to do that is if you just want to use the preamp and maybe the high pass filter and that's it, you can do that and then record your vocals and then apply effects afterwards, like a different compressor, some additional EQ and whatnot. Next up is the compressor. So if you're unfamiliar with compression, it basically reduces the dynamic range of your vocal. In other words, it takes the loudest parts of your vocal and the quietest parts of your vocal and turns down the loudest parts so they're more even in volume with the quiet parts of your vocal. Then what it does is if you see the drive knob here, if you crank that, the more compression you add, it actually takes that overall signal and raises it back up in volume. That's also known as the makeup gain on a compressor. So if you've ever seen a compressor before, you'll probably notice there's a little makeup gain knob. So for example, let's say you're sitting in a podcast and someone cracks a really funny joke and you're super close to the microphone and you laugh out loud, the compressor will actually turn down that laugh so it's more even with your talking voice. That way the volume doesn't jump out in the listener's ears on their headphone or scares anybody. The density knob is basically the release of a compressor. So if you've seen a compressor, there's probably a release knob on there. And that's just how fast the compression lets go of my voice. And you'll notice the little red LED next door to these knobs, you can see that it just takes a little longer for it to let go of my voice when I stop talking. If I decide to increase the density, it will release or let go of my voice faster. So if I go ahead and talk here and raise the density or release up, you'll see that the red LEDs are now going away faster. Next up, we have the De-Esser, and this is basically a smart compressor. It only reduces or compresses the sharp sibilant sounds in your vocals. So if you have like a sound, a sh sound, or a ch sound, it can actually reduce that so it's not jumping out so much in your signal. And you set the frequency knob first. So you're gonna wanna find your frequency where you sound most sibilant, and then you take the threshold. That's how much de-essing you apply to your voice. And if you crank that threshold, it'll sound like you have a lisp. So you don't want to go too crazy on that, but applying just enough on that threshold, you can really reduce those sibilant noises so that they're not so sharp in the listener's ear. Next up is the enhancer. Now, this one's pretty simple. You can kind of increase the low frequency detail of your voice or the hi-fi detail of your voice. So if you want a little bit more authority or a little bit more low rumble in your voice, you can turn the lo-fi detail up, and I'll do it right now. It'll sound like I have more bass in my voice, but you can definitely overdo that by cranking it. So I typically prefer not to even touch this. I like to keep my voice as natural as possible. So I kind of keep it all the way down, or I'll have it just a bit, but not too much on my voice. And then I have a little bit of the high frequency detail increase just to kind of open up the brightness of my vocal a little bit on this microphone. But these aren't really necessary, especially if you're going to use like EQ afterwards to enhance the frequencies of your voice. Next up, we have the expander slash gate. This is one of my favorite features. If you're recording in a less than ideal environment and you have a lot of noise going on around you, then this is a super, super helpful feature. It will help reduce that background noise so that it only captures your voice in the microphone. So you first decide where that noise floor is by setting the threshold right over here. And then the ratio is how much you want to reduce that background noise. And finally, we have the output button. Now, I typically just keep this at 0. My vocals come in loud enough using everything from the preamp all the way through the processing. I don't really have to change that. But if you have like maybe a lot more heavier compression on your voice and the perceived loudness has changed, you can probably tweak the output a little bit and reduce so that you're not, so that you leave enough headroom in your DAW. But I pretty much just keep it at 0. I don't really ever have to touch it, and you probably won't either. Overall, all the features on this preamp paired with the Shure SM7b microphone is an absolute bang for your buck. With just these two, the possibilities are quite endless no matter what sort of audio work or video work you are creating. It gives you so much control over your microphone so that you're not having to crank your interface preamp and expose a nasty signal that will be impossible to fix after recording. It allows you to stream or record in real time with professional sounding audio quality while eliminating background noise and hiss, and it just sounds and looks professional no matter what application you use this setup for. If you've watched till the end, I just want to say thank you. I left a link to the setup in the description below. It is an affiliate link just for your information. Be sure to click that if you're interested in this setup. You will not be disappointed. I can promise you that. Be sure to hit subscribe and like this video. It will help me grow my channel so that I can help more people and continue making videos. I'm Ace Wave. I hope you have a wonderful day.